So, the heck do I have here? I have got a beautiful little size 6 cashier's pocket watch with a cashier case, 25-year gold filled. Let me get my watch glasses on so I can tell you some more about this little baby. And what is it here? Alright, look up close here with these things on. It is not very jeweled. I'm going to look this movement up a little later, but it looks like it's probably only got 7 jewels, maybe less. I think 7. So the value of the movement's probably not that high, but it's a beautiful little watch, and the case is in exceptional condition. So what I'm going to do in this video today is I'm going to diagnose the problem. It isn't running. It doesn't seem like the balance is moving. I'm going to have a look at the case in general and see what condition it's in and what might be done to improve that. And then I'm going to go forward with repairing this movement and get the thing working again, hopefully. So let's stay seated and stay tuned in as I go through this adventure. I may tell a few stories here and there on watch repair or family things or you name it. I tend to drift while I'm doing this and talk about foolish stuff. Some of the subscribers like it and others just don't say anything because they don't want to insult me. So anyway, I'll get on with this and let's have a nice look at this watch and see what we got here. Alright, what I have here is a teeny weeny watch. It is a Waltham. It's a grade 61, model 1891, and it was produced in 1904. They ran a run quantity of 6,000 of these things, and the total production was about 116,000. It's a size 0S. I know I said earlier it was 6, but it's actually a 0S, and I was right. It's only 7 jewels. It's an open face. It's in the hunter position because the Waltham is in the top and the stem's on the side. So it's in the hunter position, and it's a Breguet or Breguet hairspring in there. It's not adjusted. It's not a railroad grade. So this is what we're looking at. So you're probably looking at a lower value, but sentimental value to the owner. So in general, what we have then. I'm trying to handle all these watches then when I'm either before I start repair or after I've completed repair with white gloves, so I don't leave any fingerprints on the watch. So if I just look at it quickly, I see that it's got a double hinge here on the back. So there's 2 hinges here, which means the face hinge is open and the back hinge is open. It's got the face has got some cracks on it. There's some small cracks going down towards the second hand on this, and there's a crack that goes from the just below the center of the watch over to the 4 o'clock position, and then there's some material, some ceramic material missing right here that's just flaked off the watch, so that's not good. I don't intend on repairing the face on the watch, so let's just leave it in vintage condition. The bail looks like it's in pretty good working order here on this watch, no problem there. It's a little loose, so I might be able to squeeze that tighter. There probably was a watch chain of some sort on here, but this is all that's left of it. I'll leave that on as well, as there might be some memory here for the owner. It looks like the rolled gold. It's a 25-year warranty on it, so it's probably 20 karat rolled gold, and it looks like it's worn out on the edges here on the face, which is kind of unusual. I don't think I've ever seen the gold worn out in these positions here, but perhaps because of the way it was put into the person's pocket. The side of the watch case also has wear on it, so there's wear along the side of the rolled gold as well. And there's a pattern on the back that's worn out. You can still kind of see it. Looks like it's flowers, but it's a bit worn as well. And again, the rolled gold is worn off in certain places, and that's just based on use over time, right? Because it's a very old movement. Like I said, it was produced in 1904, so this is over 100 years old. The watch looks like it started ticking on me, so it is ticking. Now I wound this before and it was ticking, and I started looking at this watch closely to see what the issue might be. So all the jewels, the jewel that sits over the escapement, upper and lower jewel of the escapement, looked like they were in good condition on this side. The face is not taken off of it yet, and the jewel of the 1, 2, 3, 4th wheel, which would be the second hand on the back, on the front side, that jewel looked fine as well. And it actually is moving really well right now, so the amplitude is excellent. But as I was playing with this before, it would just stop. Now I used my stereo microscope, and I looked closely at the internals on the watch here, and it looked like there was a buildup of dirt on the center wheel pinion, and that might cause that would cause the watch to stop after running for a little while. It would end up turning and hitting that, and that center wheel rolls around once every hour, because that pinion sticking out is where you attach the minute hand, and the hour hand goes over the hour wheel. It looks like a top hat that goes over the cannon pinion. So because you put the cannon pinion on the center wheel pivot, and then you put the hour hand over the top. So I saw some. I went in close, and I actually saw some dirt on the pinion, on the leaf of that pinion, and the leaf of that pinion drives the third intermediate wheel on this. Given that the barrel is wheel 1, the center wheel is wheel 2, and the intermediate wheel is wheel 3, and then the seconds wheel is wheel 4, and so the pinion of that center wheel is driving, should be driving the third wheel. I'll have to look at it closer to make sure that's how it's configured. It usually is, I believe. So it depends how they have this thing configured. Sometimes the barrel will be driving the pinion of the center wheel, and then the wheel itself drives the next one, and etc., etc. So I don't want to be telling anything wrong. So we're going to bust this down later and break it down later, and then clean it appropriately. So the good news is it is running right now, so that's perfect. The bad news is that it does stop intermittently, which is probably due to dirt. So now what I will do right now while it's running is I'll take a quick video, a slow motion video of the balance, to see what kind of amplitude it gets while it's running. So I'll do that, see if it's getting decent amplitude while it's running right now, and then I want to at least maintain that amplitude after I've actually conducted the cleaning and any repair. I don't know if any repair is required. The jewels on the movement here on the top look fine, but the jewels under the face might not look as good. Anyway, so there's markings on the case as well. Let me look up close here and see if it's had any repairs. Yeah, I have a quick look at it here, and I see the watchmakers have scraped their marks in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, 6 times, I think 6 times. So in 100 years, this thing has only been touched 6 times, which is not a lot. And you would normally clean a watch like this probably if it's used all the time, it's going to collect a lot of dirt. So maybe every 2 years would suffice in keeping this movement nice and fresh. And again, it depends on the value of the watch. So this would be valuable to the owner, but it would be a low value movement in this case. And I don't think the 0S size movements are sought after a lot. So anyway, that's the watch, and what I'm going to do now is start the disassembly of this watch for its repair. Let me open the hood on it first, though. So I'll get a tool out here and see if I can crack this open. Close the back first. You just push down on it to close the back, like so. You should be able to just push down on it. You don't want to break anything here. Got my glove caught. The good parts and bad parts of wearing these white gloves there. The good part is you can't see my long fingernails I use for playing guitar. The bad part is everything seems slippery. So just get my opener up, just put it right in here nicely. That's it, and ever so carefully I just put it in there and then just twist it. And these are slippery gloves, I don't want to drop anything. So, and there we go, and it opens up nicely, and the hinge actually looks like it's in very good condition, so you should always have a look at that hinge to make sure there's no issues there. So that'll be cleaned as well. I'll put this whole case into an ultrasonic cleaner and get rid of some of the gum that's around it. And again, the hands actually look like they're not too bad. And what I do too, and I look at this, is I look at the watch kind of horizontally to look at the hands to see if the hands are actually flat. And usually on a pocket watch, the minute hand goes straight, and then it twists at the very end, just where that thing is. So it goes beyond the hour hand, and it twists just before it gets to the minute markings downward. And this one here does have a slight twist downward, which is perfect. And again, they have there are a few cracks in this. There's more cracks than you'd want on this face, but I think if you really needed to, and you wanted to actually bring this watch back up to standard, you could probably find a 0S or S0, what do you want to call it, a size 0 face, Waltham face that you could replace this with, right? And they were pretty standard the way they made these, so it wouldn't be that difficult to find. Let me check one more thing here and see if I can change the time on it. So I can wind it. I'm feeling the winding here, and if I can, with my slippery gloves, actually open this up a bit. And can I change the time on it? Yeah, that's actually working quite well. It's moving nicely. So that's, yeah, and what I'll do is I'll move that to the 12 o'clock position before I release the power on the movement and start the disassembly. So let's just bring that up to the top like that, and then push that in again, and this is where we're going to start. So that's a Waltham size 0 pocket watch, a cashier's case. This would have been worn in the front pocket probably, as opposed to the vest pocket. Somebody can correct me if they know about the wear of these things or how they're worn. I watch a lot of watch shows on YouTube and stuff, and there's a lot of knowledge out there on the history of these watches and how they were worn properly. And I know there's a banker I know who actually wears pocket watches, and he's got his pocket watch chains, and he's kind of an aficionado of pocket watches, I think. So I actually like repairing them mechanically and getting them working again. And this is a nice movement. And just to show you for a second, this is an Admiral. This is an Admiral size 18 pocket watch, so you can see the difference in size between the two watches. And I had just completed the complete repair of this pocket watch and got a very, very good amplitude on it, and so it's working really well. And according to my Seiko diver, it's keeping really good time. So this is a very nice, but this is the size difference between the two watches, right? So it's a lot different. And anyway, so that's good. So let's dig into the repair of this watch and go from here on in. Is that right? Let's go from here. Let's continue from here. Let's start working on the watch. Okay? Right. Just before I start, I just want to tell you something here. So I'm watching this series on Netflix, and they say yeah all the time on the end. It's called Fargo. Very good series, by the way. And they say, so how you doing? Yeah, and then they say words like then on the end of a sentence. So how you doing then? And they'll add those words in the end, and I was wondering where that comes from, and it comes from the people that immigrated from Germany, who would say "ja" on the end of their sentences. So I'm a Canadian, so up here in Canada, I try to have my NBC voice or my news voice, and this is Walter Cronkite kind of voice, but I'll say A sometimes, and then when I go to the States, I try to strip my A's and go you folks and y'all and all y'all, which is more than y'all. That's like more than 2 people. All y'all, that's everybody. And I use folks instead of people, and I just flip around, and sometimes I can hide myself from being a Canadian, because the Canadians go in the Newfoundland area, they go, boy to Jesus, how's she going, eh? So they'll say that. And then in the middle of Canada, maybe Ontario, southern Ontario, they go, hey, how's it going, eh? And then as you get further west, I think the A's kind of disappear a bit until you get to the far west, and it just changes altogether. So anyway, let's get into this watch repair and stop talking about languages. Alright, I'm not going to bother with the finger cots yet, because I'll wait till I've got it nice and cleaned up, and then I'll worry about that later. So the first thing I want to do is release the power on the watch. So let's just open this up here again. You know what? I used my fingernails to jam it in there, but I trimmed my fingernails down, and now I don't have a thumbnail to jam in there. So number one, stage one of this is to grab a toothpick and then release the power on the watch. Release the power on the watch. Now, can I find a toothpick? This is a piece of pithwood, so this should do. So all I want to do is take this movement here and put a little bit of, like, wind it forward just a bit, like so, just a bit forward, and then let's see if I can do this with pithwood as opposed to a screwdriver, and then just rock the power back if you can. Let's see, can I do that? Has it got caught? I think I might have use a screwdriver because this thing is not moving. Yeah, let's get the power off this movement here. It's the power of love with Huey Lewis. There we go. So it's rolling back right now, and I just let it slide on my thumb and finger as I do this. Nice and easy. I'm not putting any pressure on the hinge, by the way, in the back with my hand. I'm holding it very lightly, and I let this slide the power back until, you know, you've got, just wind it a little further but not too far, otherwise you'll take it off the center arbor of the barrel. And you see that's not moving anymore, right? And I've got 2 screws here that I have to remove, screw 1 and screw 2. So let me get my screwdrivers out and see if I got the right one to do that with. I'm going to have to stop this video soon because I got to go visit some folks for a birthday, and I'll patch the video together later. So there's the movement. I just relieved the power from it. If I do something in the wrong order, well, you can write me and tell me I don't know what I'm doing. So I don't mind criticism, by the way, as long as it's from critics. Ha ha ha. So just remove the case screws very carefully, and I use brass tweezers because they won't scratch anything. They're soft metal, so the brass is not going to be of any issue. But my screwdrivers, if you miss the screw here like I am, I'll put this in the slot here somehow. There we go. You can scratch the face, right? If you do scratch the face here, you can take out a small scratch with a Dremel tool. I've done that before. If it's on a movement like this and it's super small, you may have a problem doing that. So that's off now. So then open the front up here. I could probably still jam my fingernail in there. There we go. It's actually easier to do it that way than it is to do it the other way. So there's the hands. I like to take the hands off before I take the movement out. That way I don't bend the hands, because if you leave the hands on and you take the movement out, in this case I've got to put the hands at 9 o'clock because I've got the case in the way there. So I'm going to put the hands at 9 o'clock to lift them out of the movement. So it's just 8:45. That way both hands are on this side, like that. I might have to focus this little beastie here so you guys can see it properly. Focus and then zoom out a little. Let me just hang on a second while I do some focusing, because it seems a bit out of focus, but I'm going to see if there's an issue here or not. No, it was actually fairly good, I think. Yeah. Focus it around 13 or 17 or something. Out of focus, in focus, out of focus, whatever. Alright, hopefully that's focused enough. I'm going to back it off a little bit too so you can see me work. So I've got it in this situation right now. The balance isn't moving at all. So I grab a piece of plastic that I have, and I'll put that plastic right over the hands. I used to take a piece of paper and stick it over the hands, or underneath the hands, and wedge it, and then use the paper to keep these tools from scratching the face. But I find that the plastic works even better. Plus, when you pull up on this, like so, the hands aren't going to fly off on you. So you very carefully just wedge these little claws underneath the hands, and then you pull upward like that, and it should remove both the hands from the movement. Let me see if I was successful or not. Yeah, there's one hand. I'll put it up here, get my stuff out of the way, and the other hand's not off yet, so let me get that in and dig deeper. And again, with all this watch repair work, you've got to be very, very careful. So it's very easy to damage a movement. So there we go. So the other thing you can do, which I like doing, is take a piece of Watchmaker's putty. It's called Rodico, or Rodico is called Watchmaker's putty, one of the way. And you just do that, pick the piece up with that. And you can pick screws up with this too, which is pretty darn handy, and that way you don't have to worry about scratching the face or doing anything like that. And once you've done that, just take those tools and put them out of the way if you don't need them anymore. So in this case, I've got to remove that second hand, and the tool for this is so small. The second hand is so small, I find it difficult to remove it with that tool. So I'll take a screwdriver and wedge it underneath like so, and just work it up. So I'm trying to do that right now. And you really got to be careful not to bust the second hand when you're doing that, right? Because I kind of got it high enough now that I might be able to grab it with the hand removal tool. So I got it raised up a bit. So, because I want to go straight up with that, not sideways, and I do not want to damage the pivot on the fourth wheel, because if I do that and I can't, then the watch is kind of permanently damaged. So just pull that up like so, and I got it, no problem. And I pick that up like this, and then put that watch hand with the other hands up here. And I'm going to look down and make sure there's no issue with the pivot. No, it's still there, it's not bent. And actually check, when you're doing this, check the center of that hole there where the second hand is, and make sure that pivot is dead center, dead reckoning, dead center on that hole. Also, the hour hand is the first one you put on, and make sure it's dead center of this hole. When I fixed that Admiral pocket watch I showed you earlier, the dial was slightly over, and the dials, I think they're called dial studs or whatever, but they go into the movement, so they're soldered onto the face and then they go into the movement, and they were super thin, so I didn't want to play with them because I could probably heat them up and bend them, and that would move the face to the right position, but it was ever so slight that it didn't cause me a big problem at all. So you got to check and make sure that's centered, and if it's not centered, then you can actually center that. So, and now that I've got that, I'll put my two fingers on the movement like this. These are the guitar playing fingernails again that I keep talking about in all my videos. Maybe I'm ashamed of it. I've already pulled the stem out, so I don't have to worry about that, and the movement should just drop right out. There we go. And I'll take this case here and put this aside. Just put it up here for now on the side like that. And now I need a movement holder. So there's various types of movement holders. I can rest this case down right now on I've got a movement holder for watches here, that just a cushion case that you can put it down on. So that's a cushion case, but I also have some movement holders of various sizes, and I like using the ones that aren't metal because they're less invasive. I also have some smaller ones. I'll show you these too. So these movement holders here, they'll fit the movement. So what I'll do is just take this and open that up like that, and there we go, like this. So that's in the movement holder. I can tighten that up a little bit, but beware that if you tighten that up too much, then you're risking bending or cracking the face some more if it's not cracked. And this watch seems like it's got a bit of it's got a dust cover on it, right? So I actually have to remove this dust cover first. So let me wind that back a bit and have a look at what this dust cover is doing other than covering the dust. So the dust covers on these pocket watches, should be a hole there, and there's a hole there. Let's rewind the watch, and usually there's little stud marks where they've pounded these little indents in to keep this in place. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you can find a groove that you can stick a screwdriver in to reel it up. But all you have to do is take your screwdriver and put it in, and then twist it, and then turn it, and then put the screwdriver in again, like this, twist it, turn it, there we go, and then do that again, and oh my God, keep your fingers away from the balance. So if you can manage to do this and keep your fingers away from the balance, you're successful. So there's the dust cover. I'll put that aside here, and that then exposes the face. And again, I'm very nervous with this particular movement, so what I'm going to do is remove the balance before I play with all the rest of it, because I don't want to damage the hairspring on the balance. So I'll get up close here and see if I can loosen this up here. And it's good to have your hand around that movement even when you have it in the movement holder, because there is that probability that that when you push down, the whole thing will fly out and rotate. So there's the screw that's holding in the balance cock. And let me just lift this out because I don't want to screw this up. So I'm going to keep this low to the ground in case I have any issues at all. And I can pick this up as one unit and just rotate it, leave it, put it down. So just a point here, that's why I'm close to the ground. This is a good idea, because when you pick this up, if it dangles, there's really not a problem, right? Because I've got a stud holder for this. Let me reach back here and find it for you. This here, and you put the balance cock on that, right, and then the balance itself dangles, right? But I actually like to have the balance resting. Turn it, flip it the other way, and let it rest, because I don't like to have that balance for a long period of time dangling down for fear of the spring actually losing its form. And I'm just hoping I can grab this properly and flip this around. Let me just turn this around here. I got my hand on the other side of it right now, and I just put this down right here. So there we go, perfect. So I put that down. I should adjust my camera so you can see where that is. You see, that's the balance there laying down. And I know most of my work is done closer here, so I have a hard time, so I may have to move that around. So now I have this situation right now. I've got to leave in 15 minutes, so I think my wife's going to come in and say, hey, it's time to go. So I want to just strip this down really quickly. So I've got to take the face off. So what I'm going to do, let me move my camera a bit so I can get deep and dirty with this thing and not have to, I want to be right here, okay? Like I've said a billion times, videotaping and doing watch repair at the exact same time is not easy. But the cool thing is, the lady who owns this movement is going to see all the work that I've done to do the repair of this movement, cleaning, and realize that I'm only making $5 an hour doing all this work, which is kind of neat. So, and sometimes I spend way more time on a watch than people think I do, because they require that attention, right? It just takes a lot of time to diagnose and clean these old pocket watches. They're not like the new ones that are out there. So now I've loosened the screws, and there's a metal rim around here, and usually there's a little pinhole that you can poke a screwdriver or something through right there to lift the dial off. If I can move it a bit, I might be able to just lift it off without having to worry about the pinhole. So I can see what's attached and what isn't, but just, yeah, I can see on this side here it needs some convincing on this side. So I'll just work on that for a second. This screw probably needs to be a little looser or something. There we go. No, that was almost it. There we go. And it went back in again. This could end up being a 2-hour movie, by the way, if I keep having success. So what I do too is I keep my thumb in there, right here, and that way when I wedge the dial out, the thumb kind of keeps the dial away, so I don't lose my what I've gained by taking the dial out. So there we go. I think the dial is ready to remove. I may have the hour wheel fall out on me too, so let me just got to put the screwdriver in here and wedge it again. So it's tricky stuff. Alright, there we go. I didn't lose a thing. So I'll put the dial down here and put that dial up, and now I've got the Canon. I've got the what's it called? It's like a little metal washer here that's bent. They're called dial washers. So it's a dial washer here, and that keeps the hour wheel pushed down. So the dial basically pushes on the dial washer, keeps the hour wheel pushed down, which keeps the wheel part of that touching the pinion here on the secondary wheel. So if I'm lucky, again, I'll just be able to pull up on the Canon pinion and not have to worry about bringing out all kinds of tools. And so I grab my tweezers, and because it's such a small movement, I just pull up on it and see what happens. I got it most of the way up. And there we go. So that's the Canon pinion. So that's just removing it with my tweezers. I do have a Canon pinion remover, and just have to make sure that the center wheel and the pivot coming up here isn't bent, and it's not, so it's in fairly good condition. And I'm just going to then remove, let me see, I've got 10 minutes left. Go, go, go! The ratchet wheel here needs to be removed now, so get in close again. My lighting is pretty shitty here, but I don't want to complain too much, okay? So I removed the ratchet wheel. Sometimes these screw in reverse, and sometimes they just do what they did there, and it's lefty-loosey and righty-tighty. So, and I can use my Rodico to pull that up usually. There we go. And there's a center wheel in there that goes on top like that, and then the actual wheel itself should come right up. There we go. And then there's another wheel there that's got a screw on it that goes off. So, and I'll have fun putting all that back together again. So I'm going to leave that screwed in for now till I have it. I usually take a photo of all this to make sure I know how to reassemble it if I have a problem. And Waltham's, I've got books, I've got pocket watch books, like Watchmaker's books on this stuff, so I should not have an issue. So I gotta make sure I put a little bit of pressure on that, which I shouldn't have. I want to have that in the movement holder if I put any pressure on that, because I'm pushing down on that pivot, and that's not a good idea. So you want to grab your screwdrivers really hard, and then I put my finger on here, even though there's a ratchet, there's a click spring that's holding it back, but there we go. Put a bit of pressure on that way. I use my, put that there, and then I can just lift this up here and lay that down. And now I'm just going to remove the face here, and I don't think I need to take a photo of this. This is pretty basic stuff. Pretty basic stuff. And some watchmakers remove the screws, all the screws, loosen them up, and then move them. I don't, so there. But I do need to get closer. So I turn the screws back until I feel it click, and at that point in time the screw has been completely loosened. I gotta put my loop down to have a look at this because it's close and it's also dark. I've kept this relatively dark so that the photography would be good, but it's pretty dark. So there we go. These things have been in probably since 1920, which is a long time. There's the screw 2, and then the screw 3. Just move this over so I can put some pressure on it. Not worry about flipping or bending the movement. If you're not careful with this work, there's lots you can damage if you don't know what you're doing. So that's 1, 2, 3, and now I've got this. Pretty sure I can lift this straight up. So I will look underneath here and see if I can wedge my screwdriver in here. Here we go, and it comes straight up. Grab that here, and there it is. Like this, and that marries up to these 3 screws here. So that's done there. I'm going to take a quick picture of the movement. I usually do that so I don't get all confused if I got to reassemble this and I forgot what I did. So bam, got my picture, and then I can. So I took the Canon pinion out. So I usually pull the center wheel out straight up. I'll put that here, and then I can remove the barrel directly up. Well, this is interesting. So this is a barrel that has the. If you look at that, the mainspring is sitting here and the barrel just sits right on top. That is weird. So I don't think I've ever had that situation before. So it's not a snap-on barrel. The arbor for the barrel is part of the plate on the top, and then the barrel itself is just sitting there, right? So that is odd, odd, odd. So that's very old. That's the way they did it basically in 1904. So another thing I do is I take a photograph of this here because I sometimes the keyless mechanisms and winding mechanisms can be tricky, and if you don't take a photo of that, and when you reassemble it, you can get all kinds of fun. So this one here looks like it's pretty tricky, so I may just stop here. There's a plate on top here that holds this down, so I'm going to have to be playing with all of this. So I'm not going to remove that yet. I'm going to remove this plate here and these wheels so I can. Don't want to interfere with things. Be safe, safe, safe. So I just pulled the screwdriver up, and where's the screw? It took a jump. So that's that screw there, and then I got to remove this screw here, and then after this I got to go to somebody's birthday party. Oh, it's actually, if you want to really know what it is, it's my granddaughter's birthday party. But I was hoping you didn't think I was that old. So that old. I guess you can be 40 and have grandchildren, right? There's no rule against that. So I'm going to lift this straight up, like so. Nice and easy. Still has a wheel stuck on it, but that's probably because it's a bit dirty. See if I can lift this wheel up here. Try to get my hands away from the camera. Oh, there we go. That wheel's out. You really got to watch the pivots on these, because if you bend a pivot, you need to actually replace it or get a new wheel, and you're better off, if you don't, unless you know what you're doing, you're better off getting a new wheel. So there's the escapement. I'm pulling that out nice and carefully, and I think I will take out the pallet fork. See if I can. I got 5 minutes left before I'm leaving, so that's the big question, is can I remove the pallet fork before I leave? I'll tell you what, I don't want to rush this. So the next step I'm going to do, I don't know if I'll film it or not, but I'm going to check out this whole keyless mechanism here to see how that's put together. Looks pretty intricate, actually, and I will strip that thing down and clean that. So just turn that over and have a look. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, and there's the minute wheel. The wheel here that converts the minutes to hours is right here, and I'll take that out as well. And I don't want to lose it. That's the big thing with these wheels, So, and I'm going to put that over where the cannon pinion and all the rest of it is, right over here, so I know where it is and don't lose it. Anyway, there it is there. I'll actually have a nice look at this, at these jewels in the bottom too, and make sure there's no cracks in the jewels there, and just do a complete examination of that area as well. And I'm going to have a very good look at all of these springs and stuff that are part of the winding mechanism, and see how difficult that's going to be to undo. I know I've been a bad boy at times and just cleaned it without undoing that, and then oiled it up. And I don't know if that's super bad, but I'd really like to get out the winding mechanisms here, which I think I can just by removal of a couple screws here. So anyway, that's it. That's the disassembly of this little tiny pocket watch, size 0, S0, whatever. Let me just put this down like that, and you can see what that stuff looks like. And I'll be videotaping a little bit later. Alright, it's now time to take the watch for a swim. So what I use here is a Zippo lighter fluid. I got to watch that I don't breathe this in too much. In fact, I think I'll use my a mask, which would be a good idea before I start this. This is I think it's a 3-layered mask. It's the same mask that people are using to prevent viral infection and that sort of thing. So it's pretty good, secure. So I'll put that on so I don't have an issue with breathing, inhaling in the lighter fluid. So the other thing I use here too is watch paper. It's very thin watch paper. You can get 1,000 sheets for not much money, and this watch paper absorbs the liquid to help speed up the drying. So it's very good. So I usually put in the plates first, and then I pour the lighter fluid on top of the plates, do the plates, and then put them back. So I like to make sure that that the bigger items are done first. And when I'm working on a really small watch, I use a little jar here that's flat on the bottom, so I can pour the fluid in and not lose too much fluid by doing this cleaning here. So put in a gamey amount of fluid, not sure what that is. And if I have a smaller watch that I'm working on, in this case I took some San Pellegrino water, and I took the cap off the San Pellegrino water, and took out the rubber insert, so it's all tin or whatever that is, aluminum or tin, and I can use that actually to clean the balance. So dip the balance in that, and all the research I've been doing over the years, I believe there is no harm in using the dipping the balance in the lighter fluid, because the lighter fluid will not loosen the shellac. That was my biggest concern in the old days, and I was very concerned with the shellac just basically coming apart on me. So, and again, like I said before, I've got a little, these are toothpicks and pegwood kind of combined. I know which ones are toothpicks and I know which ones are pegwood, but I'll use a toothpick here just to hold the movement, or the plates, the upper plates in place, and then a brush, just a paintbrush, a small paintbrush. And all you do is just sort of paint the part as it's in there. Make sure when you're doing things like gears that you don't interfere with the like you don't hold it too tight. With the plates you're fine, but with the gears you just got to make sure that you're very careful, because you can get in trouble with the gears if you bend the pivot or something like that. And even with little plates, where you put the toothpick is important. Like, don't jam it down onto a jewel. That might push the jewel out or actually crack the jewel, because there's a whole other exercise replacing a jewel. I made some videos on how to replace jewels too, which I put on my site. You can go look those up. And I have a Seats jeweling tool. Not sure if that's how it's pronounced. I was watching a video this morning where someone pronounced pre. They said prix, prix de something, like Grand Prix, and they went prix de something, and I was like, that's pretty funny. They were doing a watch review, and they mispronounced pre, which I thought was hilarious. So anyway, I don't want to end up doing that, right? Big trouble mispronouncing things. So and I'm half French and half Swiss. I think I've said that before, that my mother came from a little town called Lynn, Switzerland, where they have the famous Lynn tree. And it turns out I had cousins that work in the watch factories, and I didn't know that. And one of my cousins retired recently, and she got a bunch of watches from the watch factory she was working at, and she gave them as gifts to people that she knew. And she said, had I known you before, I would have given you one of the watches, which would have been super cool. So maybe I should still bug her and try to get a free watch out of her. But so I'm just cleaning the arbor here, which popped out of the top of the main plate. So I'm not sure, again, whether I'm going to bother with the mainspring or not. I'll have a good look at it and see how dirty it is. The purists are going to be mad at me, but so be it. So be it, you purists out there. So it's again, it's a matter of don't want to break the mainspring and have to find or replace that, because that could be an issue. And see, the watch paper is pretty good. You can grab a part here and then just put it down like that, and within seconds it takes the liquid out of the part, and you just flip it a few times, and I can blow on it as well, and I can put that part back where I had it. This mat's pretty clean. I got this mat at the dollar store, and it's they don't cost anything, but they've got a little bit of a tactile feel to them, which allows me to, if the part falls down, it's not going to roll around. That's the first thing. And secondly, if the part falls down, it's falling down on kind of a spongy surface, so it's not going to get broken, or if it falls down on that. So I know earlier I was taking out the balance cock, and I was kind of nervous about it, and which I always am with smaller watches, and I keep it low to the ground, as I think I told you, and that if anything happens, it just goes down a bit. It actually doesn't go down any further than it would go down if you had it dangling from a balance cock bridge. I'm trying to get this part out of here, and don't want to lose anything here. If I had it dangling from this, right, and it's going to be, and it sort of goes down, then it wouldn't be any worse. So actually, you can test the strength of mainsprings as well when you're trying to check out what mainspring you need to procure, and you can test the strength of that mainspring. I'm going to do one part at a time here because this is very small, and I'm also going to put my loop on. You can test mainsprings by dangling them, and I think they're supposed to dangle at 2/3 of the distance, right? So I have to look that up to see specifically what that means, but if the mainspring is too weak, it's going to dangle further down, and if it's too short, it'll be too strong. It'll be stiff and not dangle as far. So there's an old technique for testing the strength of mainsprings. So I cleaned this gear here, and this is the 4th wheel, and I'll let that dry off, but it's got the pivot for the second hand. Very, very careful with that pivot for the second hand. I've had to replace those in the past, but this one's extra small. And I will work on, I cleaned it off, but I'll look very closely at the pinions here on this side to make sure there's no dirt between the pinion teeth that would cause it to stall right when it's hitting the wheel, the 3rd wheel, for example. And just have to be very careful with these parts here because they're so small. That's what I said. I put my toothpick in one of the openings for the wheel, right where the what are those things called? Anybody who's got a bike would know. And when I wipe the gear down, like I'm doing right now, I'll do one side and switch, and then do the other side. And I'll use my my paintbrush to flip it, and I'll make sure it's always loose. It always feels like it's loose. That way there's no pressure on the part at all, right? So, and I roll the gears in Rodico, and I dip the pivots on both sides in some pithwood, right? And pithwood would look like, get a piece of pithwood out. There's a big chunk of pithwood. It's really soft. So it's soft, and it'll collect any dirt off the end of the part if you jam it into the pithwood. So and just hopefully it doesn't pith you off, right? And very funny. And I'm going to put the parts back here after they're dried off. It doesn't take long for the lighter fluid to evaporate, so which is good. And just have to make sure it's completely evaporated before I put the part back where it needs to go. And I can see this part here has got lighter fluid in the hole, so I'll just let that sit there for a while. And I'm going to get the hour wheel, do that, and I also will clean the cannon pinion and let that evaporate. And it's got, the cannon pinion's got a small hole, so it takes a while. So I'll take a blower and I'll blow that cannon pinion down. And let me get this intermediate wheel here that drives the hour wheel. So, and I'll check the teeth on this as well, because you lose a tooth on this intermediate wheel and you got to replace it completely, because there's no way of replacing that tooth. Too small. I don't know of any watchmaker that could take on that challenge. So, and this here, I forgot what it was called before, and I keep forgetting what it's called. It's the leaf something. It's the something. Anyway, this is used to, I bought a bunch of them online, just so if I lost one I could replace it. And that's used to push down on the hour wheel to make sure that it's in contact with the pivot of the intermediate wheel. So the minute wheel actually drives the hour wheel, which is kind of cool. So, and it's been like that forever. Now I'm sure there's movements out there that are made nowadays that are a bit different. There, I've got the cannon pinion here. Again, the cannon pinion, you got to be careful with all these parts, or you're going to have to source another one. And sometimes sourcing a watch part is not easy. It's difficult. This is the escapement here that I'm working on. And it's funny that when I'm oiling the watch, there's a special oil you put on the feet of the escapement. I'll call them feet because they look like feet. And it provides the lubrication for the lock and unlock of the pallet fork stones that lock and unlock as it goes tickety tick tick. And and you'll find that the amplitude of the watch will improve significantly by putting that oil on. And just because I'm a nice guy, I'm going to show you what that oil looks like right now. So that is, grab that oil here. This is Mobius 9415 oil. This stuff here, it's kind of thick. It's got the consistency of a gel, so it's not really an oil. And then all you have to do is put a little bit of that on maybe 4 teeth on the escapement, and then it'll pass it to the pallet stones, and then you don't have to worry about anything. So I usually leave the screws alone. They don't really cause any functional problem with the watch itself. And I'm going to douse this whole thing with the winding mechanism in there. So, and I've got the pallet fork in, so I should actually remove the pallet fork before I throw this in. So let me get on with that and get right back. I guess I could film the removal of the pallet fork. So just lay it flat like that. I loosened one screw already. That mask is making me fog up nicely, right? And then again, like I said before, you got to be very firm with the screwdriver, but not pressing so hard that if it slips, it crushes down and then hits the pallet fork, and then you got a whole other problem. So there we go. So that's just move that screw aside, and then grab the bridge here. My thing is fogging up here. I can throw the bridge in here now for a swim. I also will clean the pallet fork with Rodico on the end, and then use the pith wood for the pallet stones themselves, and then I'm very nervous about putting the pallet fork into the lighter fluid, only because I don't want that to loosen up at all. So in this movement here, like I said, there's a lot of screws and a lot of different gears and springs in here, and I can clean that up without a problem in place. I'll just make sure I rotate this and then oil it after. And as you can see, there's it's a pretty complex little springing movement, and I know I've cleaned those in the past, and it's taken me like more than an hour or more to reassemble it for no use, because it actually doesn't really affect the amplitude of the watch. And if you dip it in this in lighter fluid and then brush it off and move the parts as you're brushing it, you're going to get every part in there, and then it'll dry off. It'll dry off appropriately. So, but what you're not going to do is have to worry about snapping one of those springs that are in there, and then have to find and replace that spring, because that's going to be a real challenge. Now, if you got a brand new watch movement that's not vintage like this, then it's pretty easy to take that apart and clean that up, because it just makes it run smoother. But I can clean this up and get any of the oil here by doing this and then rotating the crowns in here and the kind of name of this thing I can't remember, but rotating this and then cleaning it and then moving the crown with my toothpick, right, to basically clean the other side of it, right, and just let it sit in the oil, and it's going to get rid of that stuff. And it's not too bad actually. It's not that dirty a movement, which is nice. And I've got to take the caps off these jewels anyway, with the one for the balance, the upper and lower balance jewel caps, and fix those. There's this big massive screw right here, which is kind of weird. So I got to do that. And let me flip this around. And I let this ride down on the paintbrush, so I don't get this big splash. Right, it just rides down nicely, so it's no problem. So I've got to do that with this anyway. Let me take this out now. See if I can grab that. And I don't want to drop anything, so grab it like this, and then you just put it on the watch paper. And I will probably use my blower to speed up the drying of that. Here's the blower here, and it's an old pump blower. It works really well. And another trick I've learned is that when you're blowing these parts, you blow a small part and there's other parts beside it, they're going to go for a run as well, right? So it's not a good idea to do that. So I'm going to get I don't want to submerge the crystal in this, because that'll cause me all kinds of other problems. But I will use the paintbrush and get the inside of the movement here, right, to get out any oils that are in there from all the age that it had, and I'll get the edges as well. I was going to put this in my ultrasonic cleaner, but I think that wouldn't be. I'd rather do it by hand, so I don't have any other issues here. So, and I can oil the inside of this stem and crown without taking the stem and crown out. I usually check the movement of it. It's funny, there's green, as you can see, there's green stuff falling off this watch. I don't believe it's mold, because it just looks like paint or something, but it's due to age, right? So there's green stuff falling off. So this lighter fluid works really well to get rid of all that, right? I've done a lot of watches by hand, and so I'm getting a lot of work here by doing this by hand. And I've got gloves on right now to protect my hands from the oil, which is kind of cool. I think I bought it on Amazon, but I got a couple of sets of these gloves, right? And do the inside of here too. Get rid of any dirt that might be in here, because it's going to be covering A little bit of green stuff there. It'll be covering the movement, so I want to make sure that that's nice and crispy clean. So crispy clean, and I don't need to do the outside because I'll be doing that later, so that's not bad. I do have, it does look like there's green stuff on the actual movement here. I'll just make sure to get rid of that. I don't want that in there. Try not to get too much on the face. If the glue lets go, I can re-glue the crystal on, so it's not worried about that too much. But why bother if you don't have to, right? Plus, it's possible that this might melt the crystal, so I'm going to go rinse that off. I'll be right back. All right, rinse that off quickly. I know if you've got, usually alcohol is good to rinse something with as well. But I just douse this in water. It's kind of like if you had this watch and you were in the rain, you're going to have that issue anyway, right? So there we go. Yeah, I'm looking at that crystal right now, and there's some green. There's actually some green on the inside of this thing, right? So that sting's in pretty secure, so maybe I shouldn't fart with it. I might be able to remove that with Rodico as well. I was seeing if this was loose, I'd just pop it out and then re-glue it in, and I don't want that in there, so I'll just leave that aside for a second. Just put that over there. And what else? I think that might be it. Let me look at the mainspring here and see if I got any issues here. I'm going to look closely at the mainspring to see if I want to jump in this. And it's got a tag that it's attached to and wrapped around the barrel. And I think I'll just end up oiling the mainspring to give it nice movement, and then I'll check the amplitude and stuff on that mainspring. Otherwise, I'd have to take it all out and replace it. And again, I know the Perfections, I've had some comments on it saying I should take the mainspring out and stretch it out and then replace it, but that doesn't serve any purpose if it's set already. You can't stretch out a 100-year-old mainspring and hope it works. You can break a 100-year-old mainspring, and then you got another problem, and you got to go source and buy another mainspring and blah blah blah. And if I can get the amplitude out of this watch and not worry about the mainspring, then I'm going to do that. So I had a Seiko dive watch repaired years ago, and it was an original 1980 Seiko dive watch with the 6309 movement in it. The I think it was a 7002 or something, and it was in pretty good condition and not running right. And the watch repairer, I think he ripped me off because it didn't look like he did anything. And he said he stretches out the mainsprings and puts them back. But on those watches, it's really easy to find a mainspring for a Seiko 726 or whatever. So I got ripped off there. I paid $200 to have the watch cleaned, and at the end of the day it wasn't running any better, so I was kind of pissed off. And it was pretty easy watch to clean. It's not like a vintage watch, which are a little bit trickier. So I've got everything cleaned up here, and I'm just going to clean everything up here and get ready for disassembly. Is there anything else? Should I take these screws for a swim? Yeah, what the heck. I'll take these ones for a swim. The case screws, or these are the screws for the plate, and just dab them a few times like that, and then I keep them together that way. When I know the 3 screws are for one of the plates and the other 2 screws are for the other plates. Normally the screws for the plates are the same for intermediate plate and the other plate. So the plate that covers the mainspring and the center wheel, and which is the number 2, and sometimes number 3 as well, depending on the type of watch. So give those a little bit of a cleaning, and they're fundamentally the same screws. So I have like a billion screws, so I'm not concerned about losing a screw. I won't bother with the little tiny ones. I will do the case screws though, to make sure that they're done and in good condition. So, and let's see if I can do that, like that, and like this. There we go. And that's the case. Those are the case screws. So when I'm working with the balance and the balance staff and all that, it's kind of a toss-up again. So I'm not going to use this lighter fluid again. So just let me show you what that looks like. So that's how much dirt was in the watch. Quite a considerable amount. I can actually do the ring, the dust ring as well. So it's a lot of dirt, and that the smallest piece of dirt can get into a pinion mostly, right? Which is like a little tiny gear, and that dirt jams into the pinion, and you cannot have. Basically, it stops because it hits the wheel. The gear on the wheel hits that gear on the pinion, and it can't go through that dirt sometimes, and then you've got a problem with it, with it just stopping, right? And this is what this watch was doing. It looked like it was running really well, and then all of a sudden it was stopped. So let me clean all this stuff up and come back. All right, next step is to pithwood the gears, clean out the jewel holes, and go from there. So I'm going to move some of these parts over out of the way. The other tip I have is to always keep your parts away from your hand, because you can crush a part quite easily, and not a good plan. So you keep the parts away all the time, because if you crush a part, that's it. You got to get another one. And also, when you're working with the watch parts, if you're over like this on the side with your hand, those parts will have a tendency to stick to your arm, and then you will move your arm over and then lose the part. So I'm telling you these things, but I'm hoping that I don't experience it right now. I did a while back. I was fixing a lady's watch. I did a video on it. Very, very, very small watch movement, and I just move all this stuff out of the way. And I was looking at the cap. This is the pallet fork here. I'm going to put this over where the bridge is for the pallet fork. And I was working with the jewel, the lower balance jewel cap, like the cap jewel for the lower balance jewel, right? And when I did that, I accidentally touched the. Basically, when I was doing it, it flew out on me. That's just for the. Make sure I get the right parts in the right place here, right? There's the. And that's dry. That's dry. Hopefully, all this stuff is dry. I'll have to look at this now and oil it and stuff like that. Make sure it's dry as well. And I'll use my plunger here to take this here and then just give it just make sure that that's dry. And when you're holding things again, hold them lightly because you're going to bend stuff. So stay away from the guard. Oh, see, it's a little bit still damp on the other side, right? So that'll dry off eventually. Sometimes if I've got a dirty movement too, I'll rub Rodico on the movement just to get rid of the rest of the leftovers. So, but I want all that oil, all that lighter fluid out of there before I apply any oil. So I'll let that dry for a while, and it'll evaporate pretty quickly. That's the good part about using lighter fluid. It just evaporates like crazy. Remember when we were kids, we used to use it all the time, and just for doing things you do when you're young and you don't have video games. So those are the days when we were experimental. So when we robbed gardens for carrots. I ate a lot of carrots when I was a kid because my brother and I used to, at night we'd be like 9 o'clock or 10 at night in the summertime, and we'd like, okay, what are we going to do? Let's go raid some gardens. So we actually did garden raiding all the time, and we usually liked cucumbers and carrots because you could eat them on the spot. So you garden raid, then you come back, and then you'd take your garden hose, you'd wash it off with a garden hose, and then you'd go about eating this stuff. So I don't know if my parents knew it, but I ate a lot of carrots when I was a kid, for no apparent reason. So I pick out a piece of pivot cleaning wood. Just hang on, not pith wood. Some hold on a sec, I gotta go sharpen this in the end. So this is pegwood. I keep forgetting what the name of pegwood is for some reason. Must be age. So you just have to sharpen the pegwood. This piece is actually not too bad, and I'm just gonna leave a little bit of a mess on my pad here, but I'm going to sharpen the end here. And then when you do this and you start cleaning the plates, or start cleaning the jewels and the plates, two things you got to do. One thing is to remember that if you're doing a jewel, to look at the jewel to make sure you didn't leave any wood behind. So this is I've got this here, so I can just you start at the biggest hole, and I guess the biggest hole was the mainspring hole. So, and just rub it in circles, right, like this. If you can see that, rub that in circles, like so. And you can do the other side as well for this. And there are no jewels on this plate at all, so it's a 0 jeweled plate, which is, I guess, okay. All I have is holes, holes, and more holes. But you got to make sure those holes are clean. Now, when you clean it with the brush and the brush in the lighter fluid, 99.99% of the dirt is out of those holes. So you start with the biggest hole, which would be the mainspring on the plate, which would be the mainspring, and then you do the center wheel, right? And this is a metal, whatever I want to call it, but metal. I think someone told me as you get older you forget nouns, so you just describe things. Like, you know that guy with the whatever and the hair and the whatever? Oh yeah, that guy. The guy with the thingamajig and the whatchamacallit. Yeah, that's how old people talk. So I think when I was younger I forgot names because I'm more of a math guy. So, and when I'm introduced to people, I have a really hard time remembering names. There's a guy that's named Daniel, and he works in the company I'm in, and when I first got to the company, for some reason I couldn't remember his name. So what I did was I remembered Daniel Boone, and I pictured some guy with a big furry hat on, made of skunk, or not skunk, but made of beaver fur or something, and that was Daniel Boone. So I remembered Daniel by picturing this all the time. And so what I'll do is, my trick is associating the name, right, with that person, some star, some famous person with that, right, and that way I can remember the person's name, so it's not a problem. So I'm looking at the jewels too, and you can use the back of the when you're sharpening this, use the back of that just to rub the face of the jewel, because sometimes there's some leftover gum on there. And I also use Rodico in there too, so just go in there and just take those pivots and work from the smaller one to the next one, and you make sure you do it where the jewel enters that hole for sure. That's the right side to do this with. The smaller ones, it's difficult to get the other side. So, and this one here, I actually have to take the cap off of this and then clean the cap. So, and these jewels are in very, very good condition. There's no, they're not broken one bit. So, I broke my own rule here, and I should have started with the mainspring, but it's no problem. I did the jewels. What happens is you go progressively from this. If you go progressively from the bigger holes to the smaller holes, what it does is it shapes the pegwood. So the pegwood starts, it's pointed, but it starts bigger, and as I go in and I'm putting the pegwood into the hole, it's shaping that pegwood down smaller and smaller as I go to the next one and next one and next one, right? So that works really well. And I'm just looking at the movement of the winding mechanism. That's actually really clean now. So I'm just flipping it around, and the leaves all look clean. There's no problem there at all. The crown wheel looks clean. Everything seems to be moving well. So that's all good. It's all good till someone loses an eye, right? Right. So that's good. And Now I'm gonna. This is the job that scares me all the time. I'm gonna take these gears here and have a really good look at the leafs of the leafs on the pinions for these gears, and to make sure there's nothing left in there. I should have wiped them all off. I will, with the bigger watches, I will take the Rodico and I will jam the Rodico in there, but with the smaller watches I'm worried about damaging that leaf spring, so I can still make sure that the pivot on the top, and jam that in the Rodico like so, nice and easy, and then use the pithwood on top of that too to give it a little bit of a final clean, and then turn it over. I'm using my left hand for the, it's funny, I'm left-handed for throwing and baseball and stuff, but I'm right-handed for everything else. So, and I'm looking at, again, examining the gears, the teeth on the gears, to make sure there's nothing in there at all. It's clean, clean, clean. So usually the lighter fluid will do the job most of the time. So unless the watch is like super, super dirty, and then you've got to go dig in there and make sure there's no problem at all. So but I don't. This watch is not too bad. It was dirty, as you saw. It was leftover green stuff everywhere. So when you're working with watches, you got to learn how to turn a part over with your hand, just like I did. And it takes a lot of time to do that properly, and that's so you don't drop a part. And again, I'm looking at the leaves on this, because I know I put this watch under my stereo microscope before, and I saw dirt in, I think it was the center pinion, the leaf, one of the leaves or two of the leaves for the center pinion, and that was stopping the watch. You jam the Rodico in there. And so that was not good, and that's gone now because they're all clean. So there shouldn't be any excuse here, any reason why that would happen. So that's pretty good there. And again, I want to be very, very careful. I had a coffee this morning, which is stupid, I guess, before you're doing watch work, because your hands are shakier than they normally would be. I've got pretty sturdy hands, so. Or steady hands, I guess. Sturdy means strong, steady means they're not vibrating. Anyway, again, when you're working with the pivot for the wheel, for the fourth wheel, it's very testy, so you got to watch that, so you don't end up breaking anything there. So I'll look at this one under the stereo microscope to make sure there's nothing left over in here. So, but it looks pretty good. It looks fairly clean. Fairly clean means I can't see any dirt in there. So that looks good, and the teeth also look pretty good. I'm up close with this with my loop right now, by the way, in case you're curious. And this is going to be a long video, but I want to show you everything here. This one here I'm not going to poke with the Rodico. All the little feet look fine. This gear looks good. The other thing I'm not going to videotape is me trying to twinge the gears back in place on the plate, because that sometimes takes a half an hour or so. If I'm lucky, they all kind of fall in. I'll show you the technique as I do this, but so that's that. And I'm going to do a little bit of basic oiling right now, I think. Actually, I can oil those after. What I'm going to do is take the pallet fork here very carefully and just touch the stones on the Rodico, and touch the upper and lower pivot on the Rodico in case there's anything in there, and then the mouth of the pallet fork, I'm going to push that into the Rodico and back out again. And I want to, just so you can have leftover Rodico in there as well, which could cause just as big a problem as dirt. So you want to just touch that pallet fork on some of this pithwood. I could actually see a little hair there, which is not good. And after I assemble the watch, I'll I'm going to put it underneath my stereo microscope, and it's powerful. So it cost me $2,000 used, and I'm going to have a quick look at that. A look at the movement to see if there's anything left over here. So this is the bridge for the pallet fork here, and I just want to rotate this piece of pegwood in here to make sure this is clean. See how that picked up the jewel? And again, zero pressure on there, so don't put any pressure on there at all. So, and some people are advocates of oiling the putting a drop of oil on the bridge for the pallet fork. I'm not. I did a lot of reading on this, and it looks like there's a zero value of doing something like that. So now I've got that kind of cleaned up nicely. I'm going to have a look at the face here. Again, I think I could, if I really dug deep, I could find a Waltham size 0 face somewhere online. So I'll ask the person that I'm repairing this for, or cleaning this for, if they want me to search for something like that. Or I'll repair it first and probably hand it back and ask if they want me to do something there, because it's really not worth face restoration, right, for these watches, because it takes a lot of time and you're not getting much value out of it. So, plus a lot of people say, well, the vintage look is pretty cool, right? So here I'm taking Rodico and I'm looking at it with my loupe, my glasses and my loupe, which look like this, right? And I get really close in and I look for, and I do the angle on the lighting, and so I can see if there's any dirt or fingerprints on there that I want to get rid of. And just rubbing the Rodico really lightly on there cleans it up nicely. What you don't want to do is rub off the numbers, so you got to be careful that the Rodico is not removing anything that's like the dial indicators or numbers or anything like that. So which I do, right? I just very lightly wipe it down like that, and it looks pretty good. There's a little, and you also don't want leftover Rodico. So there was some right there that I got rid of. So, and a little tiny bit right here. So the face, other than having this leftover cracks in the porcelain here, the face looks pretty good. There's probably ways of fixing the porcelain that are pretty simple. So anyway, now I got to figure out what the next phase of this job is. All right, it's time for a little oiling. In this case, I'm going to zoom in a bit. I'm just going to oil the mechanisms here, right? I'm going to tell you what these things are actually called. So I have a million books on watch repair, but this one is probably one of the coolest, and it's an old Army watch repair, wrist watches, pocket watches, and stopwatches and clocks. So this is a ordnance maintenance manual, and it's got all the different parts of the watch and cleaning and diagnosis and everything else, right? So, and if I look at the right section, like you move my camera over right here, it says I've got A, B, and C, pinion, clutch wheel, and setting wheel. So pinion, clutch wheel, and setting wheel, and then so this is calling this the pinion here, right here, just a plain old pinion. Second one is a clutch wheel, and the third one is, there's a little tiny wheel in the top plate that would be the setting wheel, or actually it's on the other side, and that's the setting wheel. And then there's all these different springs. Our wheel I told you about. The clutch lever would be, the clutch lever is this little spring here that's sort of inlaid inside the clutch wheel, right? So clutch wheel and clutch lever here, and then setting spring is the spring that this mechanism under here, or the setting spring, and the setting spring cam, if there is in fact a cam down there. So those are the names. I guess it's like, I play guitar, right? And when I'm playing guitar, I don't use the names of chords when I'm playing chords. Let me get the oils out to show you what I'm using. Alright, so these are the oils. So I use very high-end oils. This is Mobius 9010. So this blue one here, bluish, greenish, whatever one here, is 9010, and that's for all of the lower friction parts, including the balance and the upper lower balance wheels, and so I'll start off with the thicker oil, which is the D5 microgliss. Also, what's it also called? I can't remember. Anyway, D5 microgliss, which is this bottle here, and that's the thicker oil here that's yellowy, and you use that oil here on the clutch spring in these areas here because it's high friction, right? A lot of friction, thicker oil. And then as you move to the center wheel, you use this reddish oil, and that's 9104, and I use that for the center wheel, which is I use it for the mainspring, and then I use it for the center wheel, which is 1, 2, and I use it for the third wheel, which is the intermediate wheel. And then I go to the thinner oil because of the reduced friction on that oil, right? So that's how I will do that, and I'll be oiling some of these parts. So any part that has a friction movement on there, I will oil. The thicker cam here and stuff, I'll oil with the D5, right? But when I get into the springs down here, I will use the 9104 oil. So that's how I oil it. So I'm going to do a little bit of oiling here before I do the reassembly, because you can kind of get at it on this side. Once you've reassembled the watch, it's very difficult to get at it. I think that was a song or something, right? Because I was just thinking, my brain wanders, because as I told you before, I'm a musician too. So when I hear "get at it," I think that let's get to it. Let's get to. What are you gonna do if you don't want to dance? So I'll put a couple of drops in the leaf area of this as well, and that'll just ride along. And there we go. And I'll put a couple of drops of this oil too on the shaft, and that'll actually, when this goes back and forth, that'll just spread on the shaft without a problem. And again, I'm going to use this as well, just a small drop right here, and that'll help for when I rotate the crown wheel like that. That'll spread there, and then there's just a bit of friction right here on the spring that's on the cam for the crown wheel, so, and I'll put a drop in there. So I'm going to move that back and forth, and that's good there. And then one other thing I like to do is I will put a drop on the inside here, and that'll spread around. So it's all D5 there. And then let's just turn this movement around here for a second. Get the movement holder, so I don't want that to now touch the pad. So, and have a look at it from this side, and I think I'm good here. So that's all good. And then once you're finished that, you got to drive this into the pith wood. And I'm going to use the same oiler here, but I've driven it into the pith wood, so there's no transfer of oil here. So where the intermediate wheel is that takes the minute wheel and drives the hour wheel, there's a post right there, and I put a little bit of the 9105, I think that's what that is, the red stuff on that post, and that gives me a little bit of friction. And then on the inside, while I'm doing this is a center wheel hole, jewel hole or whatever, just a hole, bearing, or I can't remember what that's called, but so I'll put a little bit of oil on that as well. So that's settled in nicely. So that's pretty much all the oiling I need to do on this side here. And I'm going to put a little bit of, let me have a look at the back here. I don't really need the oil on the back here, but I do want to drive this in again. I do want to put a little bit of lubricant where the works kind of moves in here. The setting mechanism works right in here, because that's the top of this gear here. Turn it around. Top of this gear here, right, is touching that gear there. So, and also while I'm at it, I can actually put some on the shaft here, because as I turn that around, that'll spread and go into the other area of the watch, right? So let me just put that down like this and rotate that. Try to keep my hands out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. Like this, and then I've got some bench winders here. Hopefully these ones are right size, don't know. maybe not. It turns it anyway, so I'll just rotate that around to get some nice lubrication, and I've got some action here happening. And as I look at this and its movement, right, I can actually see that I'm just moving it back and forth, and I can see that there's a cam there that rubs against the screw. So I'm going to take this oil here and deal with that. I don't want to jam it into that. I think I should zoom in again, so you guys can see what I'm up to. I'm not sure how good the zooms are, but so there's a cam right there that I need to put a little bit of oil on. And again, if you put too much oil on that area, first of all, it migrate to other parts of the watch. It's going to collect dust if you put too much oil on there. And so you can just dab your Rodico in there to get rid of any excess oil. And now when I move this back and forth, that's going to move that cam against the that screw. And now it's working much better. That's a pretty complex little mechanism we got here. So, and the last part I wanted to oil that I didn't oil were the teeth on the crown wheel. So I'm going to put a little bit of the D5 on the teeth of the crown wheel here. And like I said before, I can transfer that oil around, clean that off on the end. Let me get a bigger, is that going to work better? So I can do this. No, it's too big. Try this side. Too big. Oh my god. How big is this thing anyway? Let me see. Is that bigger? I think this is the right size here. Yeah, there we go. So I just move this around, and just so the teeth touch in different places, I can rotate that a bit and then move that around again. That's square on the inside, so the teeth are probably always going to touch there. So anyway, so that's nicely oiled and ready to rock and roll. Now for the mainspring, I will take the mainspring, and while I'm in the oil business, I'm in the oiling business. Take the mainspring, and I've always done this with pocket watches too, and I've read a lot about doing this, so this is the right thing to do. Take a little bit of oil and put it in 4 places. Just rub it on 4 places in the mainspring, and that'll just follow that through. If there's, modern mainsprings, you don't have to do that with. These old mainsprings is probably a good idea. And again, I didn't want to take this mainspring out of the barrel, only because, first of all, it was providing good strength. Secondly, it doesn't look dirty at all. Thirdly, I don't want to have to go source another mainspring, because that would be a nasty. I've done it before. I've got videos where I'm replacing mainsprings, taking them out of the barrel, all that. I usually do it when they're broken and I have to replace the mainspring, but generally I don't do it. I don't want to see if the mainspring is set or not set, all that. If this was a $2,000 watch movement, definitely I'd be replacing the mainspring. This is a sentimental value kind of thing for this person, for this watch movement. So now, while I'm in the oiling business, I might as well oil the hinges as well for the case. So while I'm in the oil business, so again, for the hinges I'd use D5. So I've already cleaned off the oiler, and just put a dab of D5 on each one of the hinges. And I'll tell you a trick of determining how much oil you need to put on. You see that hinge, there we go, that's that side. Turn that around, and then some D5 on the other side of the hinge. I think I'm on the upper part of the screen right now, so I apologize. Just move this out of the way a little bit, and move this up a little bit, because I got it zoomed in a bit, so just chat away like a chatty Cathy. And I just want to make sure I'm in the right area of the watch. And there we go. Put a dab of oil on that side, and then on this side, like that. And then when I flip this around, I can put some oil on the inside of the crown. So right on there, like that. That's good, and make sure that's done. I also want to jab some Rodico inside there too, to make sure there's no residual dirt and dust inside. So let me just jam some Rodico on the inside here. If you really, like I said, if this was like a $2,000 movement, I more than likely would unscrew the crown. So I did that. Now I'll just put some oil in there again. But it's not, so I'm not going to do that. And just, you can't really see this, I guess, but I'm just trying to dab it on the inside here. So I'm just going to do that out of camera maybe, and that should stay in place, no problem. And I will go through this movement here to make sure if I don't have any leftover stuff. So that's that. I think I can, yeah, anyway, that's that. So that's good there. So I've done that. I've done this. I need to do the arbor, the inside arbor of the mainspring. So clean that off again. And again, because this is high friction, I can use the D5 on the inside here, and that will help the arbor rotate. And I just have to tap it on two sides. So I put the oil on one side, and I'll put the arbor in, and that should do. Now I'm trying to think if I've forgotten anything. I don't think so. I'm going to deal with the balance after I've put it all together, just before I put the balance in. So let me, one thing I did forget, which I need to do now, is I need to take the world's smallest screwdriver and remove the cap jewel for the lower balance spring, holding my breath. So I will, I'm going to do that and then go off film, and then that's right here. So take that off, flip it around, clean it with, I made another video on cleaning a cap jewel, so you can watch that, but I don't want to spend a lot of video time to show you how I do that. So I'm just I got to take that off. It's going to be really easy with this watch, this particular movement, because it's not like this lady's movement I was working on. So I can tighten the holder here. Just make sure when you do this, little hint here is rotate the movement so that this side is over the structure of this movement holder, and that way when you put pressure down on it, it's not going to flip sideways, so it won't flip around. I've had that happen, and it's a pain in the butt. So let me just grab the mainspring here and the arbor here, and that looks pretty good. I'm going to have to look at that arbor too after and see if there's, yeah, it looks pretty clean. Just going to touch this in the Rodico for a second, see if there's any dust or dirt in there. So what I do here is just undo these screws, and with the proper screwdriver, and I'm going to have to get in tight on this and do this, so I'm not going to bother videotaping it because it's pretty boring. So I took out the two screws for that cap, lower cap, and I should be able to just lift this up. And there's a witness mark. There's a very small witness mark on the top there. That's there's a witness mark on the top of that jewel. Let me just see if I can show you here. And so when you put the setting in for the cap, it goes exactly in where it was before. Plus, when I put my screws down over here, I put one lower and one higher, and it's matching the one lower and one higher here. That way it goes back in exactly the way it came out. So I might be able to grab it with the Rodico. If I can't, I gotta convince it out with a screwdriver. So I'll pause here and do that. So there's the movement. I decided to refocus and show you this. And I'm doing this sort of not being able to see, but there's the cap I'm taking off, and there's a small hole that you put a needle into, and then you leverage that up to remove the cap, and you can't remove it. Sometimes you can remove it from the side screws, but it's so small that I can't. So in this case, the needle I'm using here is actually too small of a needle. So I'm going to take I'm going to take my my diamond grit 2500 grit diamond plate and actually sharpen this needle to be small enough to put into that hole. So I take the needle, to make sure there's nothing in the way here, so I can show you. I take this needle here and then jam that in here and then tighten that up so I can actually hold it as I'm sharpening it, and just tighten that up nicely. Whatever way is tight, it is there. I'll make sure that's centered as I tighten it, and there. So now I have the needle sticking out here of this vise, and I just can scrape that on the plate here until I get it sharp enough to actually stick in that little tiny hole to remove the pin. I was trying to do it by holding it with my hand, but that was stupid. So, and I don't want to remove so much material that it has no more strength, and I just snap it off on the end. So it's a touchy job. If I had my lathe sitting there, I might just put it in my lathe and take off some material out with the lathe, right? So that might do the job there. And I could probably use this while it's still in this vise here, this hand, whatever they're called, hand jobby do vices or something, right? So there's a name there. There's a name somewhere. So let me just look at to see the. Yeah, that might work. So let me look at this and see if I can just use this leverage here. I'm not sure how. There's a lot of darkness. The darkness has fallen, so I'll just move this light here so you don't get too much shadow. There's still a bit of shadow as I move in here, but it's all about where the lighting is, I guess. If I was a good cameraman, I'd have the lighting work good, but obviously I'm not. So let me just see if that fits in there. I don't want this to pop out and lose it, so I'm going to do what I did before, is put a piece of Rodico on the top, and that way this thing, if this pops out, it's not going to go flying. Yeah, there we go. So that's going to hold it in place, and then I'm just going to put this in and then see if I can, if I move it up, is it going to, see that slipped, and that could have caused all kinds of problems. It's slipping sideways here, but it looks like it's doing some work. I'm take the same needle and use it from the side here. I'm really concerned about this thing flying. Anyway, I'm going to work on this, and I'll be right back. So I ended up sharpening the needle so it's like a screwdriver in the end, so I could wedge it in. So this is just becoming a bit of a pain. So let me just keep working on it. All right, success. So I took the needle here, put it in a pin vise here, and I sharpened it with the plate I showed you, and instead of making it a point, I just flattened it on both sides, and then I was able to wedge my that in between. And so I have the jewel. I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but the jewel is, let me make sure the lighting is good again, but the jewel is sitting there, and I can just move that now by touching it with the Rodico, and there we go. So the jewel's out. It's out, which is excellent. And I'll put this jewel down here for a second, and I've got to clean the inside of that jewel. So what I'm going to do, what I do is I take a piece of pegwood. There's a jewel sitting right there, and I just take the back of a piece of pegwood like this, and very carefully rub that jewel. I don't want it to pop up, but there's leftover oil on there, just stuck there. I can see it right now. So just do this. Get rid of that leftover oil, like so. So that's pretty much clean right now. And then I just need to do the same thing on the inside, but with the other side of the pegwood. So take the pegwood and just go in circles here. Get rid of any gum that's on that jewel, like so. And I take a piece of Rodico, and hold that jewel down and just tap the top of that jewel, like so. And as you recall, I already pegged out the other side of it, so it should be fine. So that looks pretty darn clean right now. And you want to, there's different schools again of thought on this, but I want to put a little dab of 9010 oil on the top of that jewel. Right, so let me look at that. I'm going to move that up to the movement itself here and make sure it's right side up, upside down. I'm not sure. Make sure it's in the right position and get rid of all this stuff that's in the way here, because I'm just going to end up screwing myself. So there we go. Get rid of that plate. Throw that in the floor. I wish I had a real watchmaker's table here or whatever, because eventually I'll get one. They're like $2 grand or $3 grand or something, but it's not the money, it's the value. So there's a jewel there, and that is in the right position. So I just have to put a little dab of oil on the top of that. It's so small. There we go. So that's just a slight little ball of oil on the top of that. And now the tricky part. So cover the oil up, get that out of the way. And now I've got to rotate that jewel. So what I do is pick that up and find, and then with the single hand, if I screw this up, I got to basically start all over again. But and look at where the markings are here. So I believe it's going to go in like so. So then I just rotate this to align that up like this, and then drop that jewel into place. With the oil, and push it down a bit, and I'll use a small screwdriver to just rotate it slightly, then push that down, and then put the screws back in. So it just needs to fall into place here. And I gotta just make sure it's the right setting. So that's good there. That is on the correct side. So then I'm going to use the back of this piece of Rodico to just push that down. So ever so slightly. It's so close that it's going to make you nervous. Not bad to put a little bit of pressure on there, but so now that's in place. So that's that cap jewel is in place, and it's oiled and it's all cleaned up. And now I just need to put the miniature screws back in. So you don't need to watch that; it's a waste of time. All right, there we go. It's in place. It's working. Everything's fine. Got some sun rays coming from here, so I got to get rid of. So anyway, that's all in place now. So that's done. So I decided to show you how that's done. So I'm going to start reassembling the watch right now. Alright, some reassembly of the watch. I might speed this up when I do the video so you won't hear me talking. So anyway, you need to put the barrel in. I got to make sure the arbor goes into the right side of this barrel. So, and I believe if you look at the square part of the arbor, that square part of the arbor would be facing upward, so that plate, so that would slip onto the square part of the of this wheel here. So that would go either in like this, right? It would have to go in like this, right? So this is, sorry, I made a mistake here. It would have to go in like this, and fumble, 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 there, in like that. And then when this goes, is that right? I think that's wrong, because that has to actually be on the top when this plate goes on like this. So even though the base of this spring looks like it's square. I don't understand that. Yeah, that looks square. That doesn't make any sense at all. So this goes in like so, like this, but then this goes on top like this, right? I think it's the only way it can go, because it has to, the pivot or the pinion for the bottom of this has to go in. Oh, there is a little square on the bottom here, so just shoot my loop and so I can get a little closer and see what this thing looks like. Yeah, there is a little square there. So this goes in. Too small for hands. I need to use some Rodico to pick this up, because it's way too small for my hands. So I'm just going to take this and then put it in like so. See if I can do that. I hate when you do videos and you watch somebody fumble with this, right? There we go. So that's in there. So that's in like that, I believe. And then that should be slightly sticking through the bottom of this thing. Yes, no, maybe? Yeah, it is. So that's sticking through like so on the bottom. And then when I put this in, the mainspring has got to wrap around that. I don't think the mainspring needs any tightening when I took that out. So it should hook in without a problem. So we'll see if that works. So just put that in like this, and then when that rotates, that should hook in. We'll see how successful I am in making that happen. So if this turns this way, it should catch that mainspring if it's going to be good. So obviously I'm going to have to play with this for a few seconds because it's not catching the mainspring properly. So lift that up, play with it until it catches the mainspring. Alright, that seems like it's in place. It's a crazy mechanism because this goes down through, and if as much as I rotate this, it won't matter. I actually have to pinch the arbor here and then rotate the whole mainspring to see if it catches. And I took my glove off here because I'm having a hard time doing this, so I'm not sure if that'll work or not, or whether I got to rotate it. I think it was this way, but again, it's going to have to wrap around the arbor of that mainspring. And I think it's in there but not wrapped around, so I'll have to disassemble it and make sure that works. So I've got to use these vintage mainspring pliers here that have there's an inner sort of, it's oval or rounded here on the inside of here, and then it's just like a round peg here. So when I squeeze that, it's going to take that mainspring and crimp it in a bit because it's not grabbing onto the arbor. Alright, that seems to have worked, so I'm going to put the mainspring back in there. Alright, everything seems to be back in place right now, so that was very tricky. I get a pair of gloves on here so I don't cause undue marks on the movement. Just bear with me for a second. There we go. So that's done. I'm going to back out a bit so you can make sure how close I am or how close I need to be. So I gotta get a spider on my leg right now. The heck, get off my leg. So there we go. So that's that. Now I want to get that plate back in, so I have this whole side of the movement in the right place. So I'm just gonna see if I can get some of these pieces back in here. I think I've got to do it in the right order too, because it's you do it in the wrong order, you're kind of screwed. So I got to sort of reverse it in. Starting with the escapement here. So I'm just going to replace the escapement and all the rest of it. Funny thing, when we got to put these gears in the right order, or they won't go in. So, and they're touchy. And I usually like getting up close, and I got the wrong loop on right now. So. It's going to be one of these bear with me statements here. There we go. That one's in. Usually I put a very high magnification loop in place here so I don't have to play around with this so much, right? Because it takes a long time it takes a while to get this thing in properly, right? And I think, I can't remember whether this is part of this, I think it's part of the bigger plate. And not the intermediate plate. It's going to be like a 2-hour video here. There we go. That's in, and then this is usually pretty easy. You just throw that in the hole and away you go. Again, you got to handle these parts with a lot of care. So you don't want to just rotate that around, and that should slip right in. And there we go. They're all kind of sitting in place right now. I will put the pallet fork in after I put the main plate in, because I want to make sure that the mainspring is in place and working well. So, and just lower that down on everything. And as you recall, I oiled all that stuff up, so we shouldn't have any problem. So let me just grab this in the right place so it can be lowered, and then I'll make sure the pivots are all in the right place. And I got to make sure I'm not forgetting anything as well. There we go. And there we go. Now when you put that down, you just have to make sure that these wheels are going through before you screw anything down. So just look on the top and you'll be able to see the pivots, right? And if you're seeing the pivots, you've got success. If you're not seeing the pivots, then you're going to squish something. So, and you can use a small screwdriver to wedge it around. I've got a needle that I typically use. So what I do is I put the 3 screws in first and don't tighten them at all. So I just hold the plate down a little bit, like that. And I put these screws in just so they're kind of holding the bridge down. And that way you can play with the, can't see anything, it's so dark. My lighting is just shits. There, that's better. Is that better? Hopefully that's better. That way when I'm over it like this, you can still see something, right? Or just work at an angle. I apologize for the darkness from before. Actually, I'm seeing all of the pivots through the hole right now, so it must have slipped in. So, another indication that the pivot is in place is if you look at the edge of the plate, it should be touching the bottom plate, and that way you know that they're all down, and you can go ahead and tighten it. But the biggest hint here is not to tighten the plates completely until you absolutely know everything is in place, because you can destroy the pivot on the gear real easily. So, and this is tricky stuff. So, not super tricky, but tricky enough. Tricky, not tricky, which is like trickier than tricky. I'm on a rant. Shut up. So you look at that, and you look at the edge here, and it's completely down, and that's completely down on the edges. You can see that the plate is completely down. So now I can torque it a bit, get the right screwdriver, and tighten it just a bit, not a lot yet, because I may have to take that apart again if the mainspring doesn't hook properly. It hooked, but it's a weird mainspring. There, that was a slip. So that's that there, and that's in there, and so that's good there. And then I can put these ratchets back here. So I'll just drop this one down first. There's a little groove in there, and that's lined up with the groove here, so it's in the groove, as they say. There's some funny stuff going on, but that doesn't go in until the ratchet goes in. So I'm going to put the ratchet in first, like that, and then this here in, and that again, like I said, lines up with the groove in the groove. and there's a little screw in there that's part of that, so it should just fall down, which it did. And then the ratchet screw goes in like that, and guess what, it screws in clockwise. I think I need a decaf instead of caffeinated, so I do feel shakier right now than I normally am. I'm normally not shaky at all, but I think when I'm videotaping stuff I get shakier. There we go. So that's in, and again I'm not going to tighten stuff down super tight until I make sure this whole thing works. And then there's a little square hole here, and you have to line the square hole with the top of the square hole with the arbor, so line that up so you don't have to play games. And like that, and then you move the click spring out of the way, so that's in place there, and then you can just take your screwdriver, hold that down a bit, and then move the click spring out of the way so it snaps down in there. So like that, that's there, and it should just stay there without a problem. And I'll just put the screw in, and like I said, if you group your screws with the you're going to be, it's going to work nicer than trying to put all this stuff together and forget where all the screws are. So just group your screws. And when you're working on like a watch movement, like a Seiko watch movement, or I did a Rolex watch movement for a friend a while ago, and it was not working properly, and I think I was shaking when I did that movement, but that was because I didn't know that this thing was $17,000 movement, which is average, I guess, for a Rolex, but still worried me. And in that case, one slip of the screwdriver and I'm out of business, as they say. So I'm trying to get this to hook. Actually, it won't hook when I turn it that way. I think it'll hook when I turn this, and then I'll know that the ratchet is that this is turned the right way, right? Hopefully, I don't know. This is something I may have to play with. Hold the gears in place and just turn this until it hooks. Anyway, I'm not getting any hook on this thing, which is kind of a little bit disturbing. Turn it slowly and see if it's going to hook onto that spring. Yeah, if it doesn't hook on, I gotta take the plate off again and play around with that, tighten up the spring around that arbor. Doesn't look like it's hooking. Rats, big tall rats. That's not good at all. Yeah, that's a bit upsetting, because now I have to take this apart again and make sure that thing hooked. Now it hooked when I tried it last time, but it's not hooking now. Yeah, I gotta take that apart because it's not moving and not hooking. Yep, alright, take it apart, start again. Alright, that worked. It took me about 5 minutes to take that plate off and tighten it up. I just squeezed the mainspring with my tweezers a bit around the arbor. Squeezed it, then I put the arbor in, and it bent a little tiny bit, so I'm a little concerned that I'm not sure how strong that bend is, so if it's good, it's good. If it's not, it'll snap, and I will end up having to replace the mainspring, which is, it's not life or death. Don't really want to do it, but it ain't life or death, so I'm good with that. And I'll just proceed with the, what I want to do is put the rest of it together and then wind it up a bit and let the wheels turn to see if I've got good movement, and that's before I put the pallet fork in. So I'll end up, so I got to put this plate on here. It's kind of neat that when they built this Waltham, that they decided to just put a couple of plates on, and it makes it like a boatload easier to actually assemble this thing. So I'm looking at this now, and I think I got both pivots sticking up through the holes, which is rare. Maybe I don't. I'm not sure. Anyway, like I said before, I put a few of the screws in and I play with it, because that way I don't have to hold my finger down on this. So just put the screws in very, 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 very lightly, and then I don't have to play with the thing while I'm doing this. So I gotta leave soon because I gotta go to my cottage, and which means I won't finish this today. I'm hoping to finish the video today, which would be nice, but I might not be able to, so we'll see. So that's one screw. It's not tightened at all, so it's just sitting there, and I think there should be a course on how to grab screws, and I could probably teach it. We'll see. So just tighten this up just a bit, not a lot, and there we go. So now that's sitting there, right? So now I can do some tweaking, make sure that the gears are in the holes. That one looks good, this one doesn't. It's actually releasing some energy right now, as you can see, so the mainspring is working. There we go. So that's not a problem now. But I don't think those pivots are in the holes. You know what? I think they are in the holes. I'm going to tighten it up just a little bit more. Put my finger on the top nice and easy, and just tighten it. Oh, there it is, spinning like crazy. So that just spun like crazy. So if I turn you can turn the mainspring from the top here, and just click that a bit, and you'll see the whole thing just spinning, which is nice. If I let go of that wheel here, yeah, it all spins, which is good. So that means, now before I tighten everything down, again, I'm going to turn this around and make sure I can see all the pivots. Because if I can't see the pivots, then we're going to have a bigger problem. So pivot, 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 pivot. Alright, so I can see all the pivots, so I don't have any issue. So what I got to do now is put the pallet fork back in, and that will stop it, of course, from flipping around. So I'm going to put this on a piece of paper so it doesn't pick up any dust at all. But turn that around, and the pallet fork, the little knife or the blade or whatever that's called, what is that called? It prevents the pallet fork from doing bad things. That usually goes down. This one looks kind of weird, so I'm going to check and make sure that goes in the right direction. Pallet fork would typically go the other way, not the way I'm looking at it right now. So I'm going to grab that and turn that around. It doesn't seem to want to turn around, does it? So the pallet fork is acting up. Oh, there we go. So that's now on the correct side, and all that does is prevent overbanking. So that, I'll confirm that's the right side. I took a photo of it before, but I'll confirm that later. So I just have to make sure that's in the hole, and the banking pins and the pallet fork is on either side of the banking pins, and then we got ourselves a deal. And I'm going to have to get close up and dirty on this one as well, so I'm going to pause the video. So on this particular movement, the dagger for the pallet fork actually goes up. I just looked up one of my photos, and it looks like it's up, not down. So I'm going to have to look at another photo here just to confirm that, and zoom in, and yeah, and I just zoom in on this particular photo here, and I can see that the dagger is up, not down. So it's always good to double check, triple check. And when I put the bridge back on, I'll know right away whether I've got the right configuration on this thing or not. So So I can drop the bridge in here and see what this looks like. I'm a bit too close right now, so I gotta change glasses and I can't see a damn thing. This is going to be a long video. I might have to cut some stuff out. The best thing for me to do is stop talking momentarily, and then I'll determine whether I need to take that out when I'm producing the video. So there we go. So that goes in underneath the center wheel and kind of just in place there. So I just kind of drop that. So I'll just take it easy and try to move that into place here. Oh, there we go. Looks like it's in place. I could have some action here. So that's the pallet fork here. I think these are the screws for it. Pretty sure. So screw 1 and screw 2 for the pallet fork. So I'm going to just put those in place and then test the pallet. Alright, what I did here was, I'll zoom in a bit here. So when you're putting the pallet fork bridge back on, it's a little trick here is that you can hold the bridge down with a piece of pegwood, long piece of pegwood, while you're screwing this in, because the pallet is so light that it just doesn't want to move around. So, and I put one screw down now and not that tight. I could perhaps put the other screw in and test it before I actually screw both screws down. So I do not want to break the end pivot for the pallet fork. So I got one screw down now, and I'll put the other screw in. So that's in there. It's not tight yet because the screwdriver was a bit big for what I had to do. So what I'll do is put some energy on the mainspring. Now there's a lot of praying going on here because I'm praying that this mainspring is not going to cause me problems. So I'll just move this over like this so you can see what I'm up to, and just tighten the movement holder down and see if that's the right size. So I will be pushing in and then rotating this here. So there's some energy in the mainspring right now. I'm hoping it doesn't crack on me. Like that, and then just touch the back of the pallet fork. If that snaps back and forth, I'm in business. So and it looks like it's snapping. Not snapping very hard, but it is snapping because I still have to oil it. So yeah, that's snapping back and forth. What that means is that when it's the impulse jewel on the roller table now, that'll be pushed by the mouth of the pallet fork, and that seems to be working. So, and let me look in the back of there to see if I can see a pivot. Again, I'm looking for the pivot on the pallet fork. So that would be, just look up like this and make sure there's a pivot there. And yeah, I think I can see a pivot. So just so important that you don't squish the pivots, right? And yeah, I see a pivot sticking through there, so I'm good. And there's a pivot definitely sticking through in the top, so that means I can tighten down the pallet fork without risking of breaking the pivots. So I can tighten that up. It's nice and snug. You don't have to overdo it. And then turn this a little bit so that when I put pressure down, it doesn't flip the movement over. And I can tighten the plate here because I don't believe I tightened that yet. Tighten the plate here. And I'm going to tighten these because I didn't tighten that yet. Tighten that. See, I almost flipped it. I'm breaking my own rule here. And then tighten this part here. So that's all tight. And these plates were already tight. Yeah, I already tightened all that. So there, the movement's pretty much together. So the remaining part is put the bridge back in. I don't want to videotape the cleaning of this balance cock and balance thing. So, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do here, right? So what I'm going to do, because I've done this a million times, it just takes so long. It's going to be a 5-hour video. So what I'm going to do is right under here, you just unscrew that and push the stud up, and that'll remove the balance, the hairspring from the balance cock, and then I can take the whole balance and hairspring off, and I can clean the pivot on the end here, clean the pivot on the other side, flip it around the other way, remove the capsule on that, clean the capsule, put it all back together. So that's like a movie onto itself, and I don't want to have to do that. So I'll just go back, go away, and then come back, and it's done. All right, we're good with that now. I'm going to put the movement back, or the balance cock back in, and pray that it starts ticking. That's the it never hurts to pray sometimes when you're doing this sort of thing, right? So I don't have my gloves on right now, but I really need to have the tactile feel here. So turn that around like that. Grab the balance like so. I really want to grab the other side of that balance, not this side, so just turn my tweezers around here a bit. And I don't want to drop this balance. So, alright, let me just tuck this in then, like this. And then very carefully put the balance down. I can't remember which side the pallet fork was on, so I might be wrong here. So what I don't want to happen here is for this balance to fall out. The pallet fork is on the inside here, so I have to approach the balance from this side and then rotate it in place, right? And that way the impulse jewel is on the correct side when I turn this around. So it's tricky. I keep my finger right here. I'm sorry for blocking here, but really I don't want to lose this. I don't want the balance cock to fall out, and I really don't want to break a pivot or anything like that. So there we go. Oh, I got some minor movement happening here. So I'm going to put the screw in just a little bit here, because I don't know whether that balance is sitting in the right place right now. So I'll just put that screw in and screw it down a little bit, like this. I think I got to get in close for this, folks. I'm sorry, but I also think that the pivot for the balance is kind of on the wrong side. I'm just going to put my hand ever so slightly on the top there as I turn this. There we go. And I do not want to tighten this at all until this thing starts ticking. So just tightening it really slowly, like that, and seeing if I get any action at all. Just loosen this up a bit and turn that in place. It is turning a bit, but doesn't seem to be turning that much. So it just sort of wants to work right now. I still have to oil the pallet fork, so I still have got some work to do. Is that the right one? 1, 2, 3. Where's the other winder? Should be the right one. There we go. Now, I just look at that balance flat and see if that's sitting in the... No, that's not right. So, just loosen that screw a bit, because I don't think that's in the place right now. Alright, there we go. I got some movement here. And I'm just going to push down on the balance so that the pivots don't move out of place while I tighten this a bit. And then start moving it. So there we go. I got some movement there. And then what you do, take this, turn it sideways a bit, and look at it flat. Look at it on the flat to make sure that it's absolutely flat. And you're not going to really, unless you go under a microscope, be able to see that pivot going through, right? So, but that looks pretty good. That's obviously there. And then when you tighten this up, just tighten it slowly to see if it stops the balance. And it's not doing that, so we're good. So the balance is now in there and it's ticking away nicely. So this watch is going to have to work itself in, as they say. So what I will do, because I want to have this whole video complete today, is I am going to reassemble the rest. I need to put my gloves back on because I'm playing bad boy here, and I don't want to put fingerprints all over the movement. So I'm going to put my gloves back on. I do need to put a dab of oil on the escapement because I haven't oiled the top, I haven't oiled the escapement, and I did oil the bottom. So there's still oiling required before I put this together. But I want to put this, put the ring back in, and then oil it. Right? And again, keeping away from anything I could foul on this movement. So just put that ring back on like this. And it's completely lined up. See, I got non-fingerprint fingernails here, so which are perfect, right? So put that ring back in, and that's down there. And then oil. I'm holding it here, but it's too bad. Too bad. So sad. I just have to shift this over before I put it down. So shift the ring over a bit. This ring is going to be a pain in the butt, I can tell. Not really in the right place, so I just, again, under the video camera, it's tough to do this stuff. So good news is the watch is running now, so which is good, which means I've been marginally successful. I'm going to Rodico the edges just so I don't have a problem with that, and then very slowly move that ring around. It's not in the right place right now, it just needs to be moved slightly over and then down again. And sort of right there, and then I don't want to foul the balance, so I just have to be very careful doing this, because if I do it the wrong way, that balance is going to be, it's going to be a problem. Lucy, I got the problem, Lucy. Okay, that ring looks like it's in there nicely now. So just tuck that down on all sides. Ring, ring, ring. And that actually protects that balance from getting squished because the ring is on the correct side. It's good there, and I'm going to just make sure that ring, it looks like it's a little bit to the right, so I got to take that and push it over a bit. And that, my friends, did it. So now I've got no, it's not interfering with this at all, right? So now I'm going to put a little bit of oil on it, right? And get a bit of better amplitude by oiling it. Clean off the oiler, and what we're going to do, so oil there, oil, 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 just in trouble. Oil there, you can already see it spinning better now. Oil there, and like I said before, higher friction areas, I'm going to use the 9105. Oil there, that's good there. And I oil the other side, but I'm going to have a look because I need to, basically I oil from the other side, so I want to make sure that balance is not in the way of anything. So get my oiling stick out again, jab, 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 and I need to oil, you see where that's where the balance is, so that's the escapement right there. Oil that. Got to get in closer here so I can see what I'm doing here. Oil that. Put a little tiny bit of oil over the seconds. And it's sticking through, and then some oil on this side here. If you over oil, you're going to get problems, so you don't over oil. There's oil cups here, but you don't have to fill them up to the top. So, and I'm going to use the 9105 for the center. This is a long video, my friends. There, that's good there. And then I need to, on this side, put the intermediate gear on. And if you recall, I already oiled the post here, so I'm just going to throw that gear in place, which it should sit in nicely. There we go, like that. And then I'm going to push the cannon pinion down. Hopefully I got no issues there at all. When you're pushing the cannon pinion down, you're pushing the plate on the other side as well, so you got to make sure that I look down and make sure the gears are meshing before I push, and I don't have an issue there. And I can do that in a few ways, but really I just want to turn the cannon pinion so the gears are meshing before I decide to drive it into place. I can use a staking tool to push the cannon pinion down, which I've done before, which gives you an even kind of pressure on the cannon pinion, because you don't want it to screw up, to foul. So push it down a bit there, and just you look on the other side here. So, again, don't want anything to foul. So that's good there. So what I'm going to do is place that flat like this, and that way when I push the cannon pinion down, it doesn't push the plate. Alright, so the cannon pinion's in place. Watch is still ticking, all good. Now I'm going to flip that over before I start doing crazy stuff, and just put a little bit of oil on that pallet, those pallet stones that I talked about earlier. And again, I got to switch goggles because this is like micro work when you oil those pallet stones. But I've seen some incredible increase or improvement in the amplitude by doing this. So hoping that YouTube lets me put all this on, because it seemed to be a long video. So just put that down like this and tighten it just a bit. I like this dust cover because it keeps my fingers away from the nonsense. There, a little tiny bit of this stuff, and where I'm just going to go in and put it on the feet of the and that will go around, and then it'll end up distributing that to the will nicely distribute that to the jewels on the end of the pallet fork. So you just have to put a little tiny bit, and that just the release and lock and escape kind of functions of the pallet fork. It gives it's less friction, so it's going to spin better because of that, right? And I'm getting pretty darn good amplitude right now, which is nice. It's nice, Jerry. And I usually check it upside down too, but I'm going to flip the movement around here. Trying to be a good boy again and just use one hand, but I'm sorry, and keep this like that. There we go. And now I've got to, I'm going to try to get this thing cased in the next 2 seconds. So I got to put the hour wheel back in. Of course, the other wheel fell out because it's just sort of not just holding there, but it fell out. But that's no problem. I do have to make sure that it's, when I put this back in, though, that it's meshing up nicely with the cannon pinion. So that's kind of, I turned it upside down. There's really nothing holding this in place nicely. So So I think that's not meshed. It's almost meshed. Is that mesh there? I think no, that's not meshed. You don't want you don't want to break anything here, right? So just be very careful with it. Drop it down. If it doesn't work, drop it down again. Just keep playing with it till it works. And then you're good. And I know I don't have to unscrew all this stuff, so you have to attack it from the other side. Oh, okay, I think it's in. Let's look at that. And I think if I turn this, yeah, there we go. And you can see that the cannon pinion is turning nicely with this turning too, so I don't have any issues there at all. That's working nicely. I'm going to zoom in on that a bit so you can see that working. Again, when I do these videos, I just pray that it's sort of in focus enough. So that's good. So put in the arrow wheel, and that'll mesh with the pinion on the top here. There we go. That's meshed in there. And put a little tiny bit of oil on where the gears are touching, right there. And I'll put a little on the side here too, so that just ensures that I get nice smooth movement of that. I should also be a good boy here, and I'll put a little tiny bit of oil on the cannon pinion on the outside, which allows the arrow wheel to spin nicer. There we go. It's going to be one long video. I put that in there. I don't know if they'll allow me to put a video in that's over 2 hours, so that's why I'm rushing it here. Okay, now I put the spring on, and that, like I said before, it's bent upward, and that keeps the face away from the keeps the wheel down, keeps the R wheel down. So now I know this is a hunter, so it's sideways, which means it's like this. So I keep the 12 o'clock like that, and when I put this down like this, it should just drop in, and it did. So that's nice. You know something though? I can't tighten the screws on that until I take that dust cover off. Nice and wonderful. Darn it. I might just be able to lower it a bit and do it that way. See if I can lower that dust cover just a tad and to tighten the screws on the if I lower it just a bit, then it's going to give me access to the screws, and then I can raise it up again. So there's the screws there. So lower that. Let me just move over here so you can see what I'm doing. I just lowered the dust cover just a bit to get access to the case screws. So just tighten that case screw here. Turn that around a bit. And the other case screw should be right here. So lower that. Tighten that case screw. So you get the play-by-play, man. You're lucky. You're so lucky. And then turn that around, and there's the other case screw. I don't have my screwdriver in the right place. So there's the other case screw, like that. And now I just have to push this dust cover back down again, nice and carefully. There we go. Dust cover, I believe, is in place. Yes, it is. And I'm going to Rodico off some fingerprints here. Just lay this down nicely, and then see if there's any fingerprints. I'm just going to hit that with Rodico a bit so I don't leave any leftovers here. That'll pick up any oil or any fingerprints that are there. So, and you can see this movement's just ticking like crazy. This is excellent. This is a really good amplitude on this thing. So now I'm going to case it before I screw something up. So turn it around this way, and I need to put that in the case. So find where the winding stem is, and then just place it in nicely. So Just pick that up, uncase it, and then put the hands down after, so I don't foul the hands. There we go. And it seems to be grabbing, and that's nice. I should zoom out a bit here. You guys aren't seeing this. So there we go. So now it's in the case. So I'm holding it with one finger on the bottom, and then the other fingers are on the top. So I just have to get the case screws and put those in. I'm almost done, baby. I'm almost done. And tighten that. And I don't think I'll include timing the watch as part of this video, because oh my god, I'll get a call from YouTube and say, I'd like to speak to JD. He's using up all of our server memory. That's one screw. I had a movement a while back that if you tighten the case screws on, it actually tightened the plate down, and it actually kind of interfered with the watch itself. So you got to watch when you're doing that too, when you're tightening the case, because the case screw is down, because you can actually foul the watch as well. So there we go. That's in place now. The other case screw is in place. Make sure that's tight. I don't want it too tight right now, but just a bit tight. Gotta get the right screwdriver. Okay, so that's good. There, it's ticking away nicely. So I'm going to just close this to protect it, and close one side, and see if I can put the hands on. I'll clean the case up after, but I'd like to finish this video today, and I can just sense my wife outside going, when is he going to be finished? When? So there's the hands. There's one hand. It's got to go on. And there's the minute hand. I'll put these hands on first, and I'll put the second hand on after. So let me put this hand in place, and I've got the tools to push this down. So hand number one, just put that down like that, and then I just line that up with 12 o'clock. I line it up just before 12 because it takes me a millisecond to put the other hand on. That way I get them lined up nicely, right? So that's one hand there, and then I gotta push that down. Alright, that went down nicely. That's the hour hand. And then the minute hand goes on top. And same, just make sure it's aligned properly. Like that. And actually I'm going to use a smaller one for the minute hand, because there, that's good. And look at it sideways, and then make sure the minute hand isn't touching the hour hand. So I gotta, actually this hand is on backwards because the tilt is downwards, so I gotta take that off really quickly. And I think I didn't really push down hard on it, so I just should just be able to wedge that off. There we go. And make sure that I put it on backwards. Make sure it's on the right way. Working with these hands, it's always good to work with Rodico, by the way, because you can stick it and then move it, and then stick it and then move it. So that's stuck and moved. And the hour hand's already moved a bit, so just put that like that. So I make sure, like I said earlier, that the minute hand goes down and it's like this on the end. So just make sure it's like that, because sometimes they look exactly the same on both sides. So it's which sucks, but it's true. So just line that up nicely. There we go. And let me look at that minute hand to make sure it's on and flat. On and flat. It's not bad there, and then I got to push it down a bit because it's probably can go down a little more. And it's at a bit of an angle, so you want it to be on and then flat. Okay, that felt like it went in nicely there. Alright, that's nice, and I'm looking at it from the angle there, and I can see that it's not going to interfere with the hour hand. Now this hand here, the second hand, I'll zoom in for this one because it's specialty work. So here's how I put the second hands in. I just throw them down like that. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see. And I got 24 minutes on this particular part of the video, which is crazy. I think this thing is going to be like 3 hours long. I'm going to have to edit it. So I'll take this like this and get a smaller screwdriver, and I look down for the pipe, which is the pivot of the fourth wheel, right? And I have the minute hand sort of resting sideways, and then I just kind of let it rest on the pivot of that fourth wheel. And once I know that it's over the pivot, I can push down on it. I usually don't use Rodico for this part, by the way. And then you just push down a bit with your screwdriver, and there you go. So that is the watch. I'll just make sure that it winds and sets. So push that in like that, and it's already fully wound because I wound it earlier. So pull that out and make sure it sets. Let me see, what am I doing here? Like that, and the time is 11:42, so 11:42, and I will let that run for a full day and see what time it is again, and look at it and see whether it's working well or not. So it's ticking, it's working, it's all good. So that's my video. Thanks for watching. That's a joke. And it was kind of neat working on this watch. And I think it's pretty good condition, working well now. No issues. Let's just wrap it up. Wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen. Hang on a second here. I'm checking that minute hand. It looks like it's touching the top. Oh, maybe it isn't. I'm just dreaming here. Yeah, I'm dreaming. I am dreaming. I'm going to let this run for a day and see what happens, just to give it some personality, some oil, as they say, right? So let it run out, and then you've got yourself a pocket watch running really well, no problems. And I'll talk to you. I'll see you later. That's it. Thanks for watching. See you soon, and thanks for watching my channel. So that's a Waltham size 0 pocket watch that's been completely repaired and cleaned and repaired, actually cleaned.